Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today. As Jordan said, I'm Caitlyn Kurtz with the Center for Nonprofit Excellence, Director at the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. A very long title, and you said it effortlessly, so kudos to you. I'm very happy to be here today in the library. If you don't know about Community Foundation or Center for Nonprofit Excellence, we often do no-cost trainings for nonprofits right here in Champaign and across 9 counties total in East Central Illinois. So this is one of many, and I would love to get to know you, see how we can support you, and I'm happy if there are new faces in the room, we get to kick it off here tonight. So. One other housekeeping note, there is some really helpful handouts in the back of the room if you can make sure to grab one, and specifically there's one that's titled 5 Steps to Starting a Nonprofit. So today's presentation is really going to walk you through that whole process, so if you want to have that out, be taking notes, there's some pens back there, and of course help yourself to beverages. All right, so first and foremost, I'd love for everyone to look around the room. Everyone here showed up because they care about something deeply enough to want to build something around it, and that matters. So whether you have a fully formed idea or just a feeling that something in your community is missing, you're in the right place. So tonight's going to be a little different from how we've run this training in the past. We're going to spend the first part of our time together really honing in and talking about preparation. So what it really takes before you file even a single piece of paper. And then we're going to hear from people who have actually done it. So we've got real founders here in the room with real stories, real mistakes, and real wins. And I'm really excited to bring them up later tonight. So let's start here. Starting a nonprofit is one of the most generous things you can do with your time, your energy, and your resources. It's also one of the most misunderstood processes out there. And hopefully tonight we're going to change that. So before we talk about how to start a nonprofit, I want to ask a question that most people skip. So is a nonprofit actually the right structure for what you're trying to do? And I'm not asking this to discourage anyone or say that you should not go the nonprofit route, but I'm simply asking because there are alternatives worth knowing about. So for example, as you'll see on the screen, and there is a really helpful handout that's an article from NOLO, which is a really great resource on nonprofit law and governance. And so that kind of will dive into some of these options that I'm going to highlight. So for example, fiscal sponsorship lets you operate under an existing nonprofit's umbrella while you get started. So this means that no incorporation is required. And a social enterprise, so this is something like a B Corp or an LLC, this might help you generate revenue in ways that a nonprofit can't. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to partner with an organization that's already doing adjacent work and really focus your energy on collaborating and elevating that shared focus. So none of these options are lesser than a nonprofit. These are just different tools. So the question is, which one fits what you're actually trying to build? So I really want to emphasize this and have you keep that question in the back of your mind as we go through tonight. And I also want to note that a lot of times when we hear 501c3, it is the cream of the crop. There's no other options. And I want to actually clarify why you want a 501c3. And that is because it increases your ability to attract and receive public and private grant funds, as well as donations from both public sources, so like our community foundation, United Way, as well as private individual donors. And also this status will protect and mitigate personal liability for you and your board of directors. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I just kind of wanted to start on the front end and sharing that. All right. So knowing your landscape, who else is already doing this work? Once you've decided a nonprofit is the right path, the next question is, what's already out there? So this is the portion where you're going to do market research. And yes, that applies to nonprofits just as much as any business, any of those ones that we mentioned in the previous slide. So you need to know who else is operating in your space and what they're doing well and where those gaps are. And this is not to copy them or compete with them unnecessarily, but just to simply understand where you fit. So this is the good news though. In the nonprofit world, like I said, overlap can lead to really wonderful partnership rather than competition. So if someone's already serving a piece of your population, maybe you serve a different piece, or maybe you can find a way to collaborate. So the Venn diagram on this slide is about not just trying to find reasons to start, but it's about starting with your eyes open and also being just very clear on the unique problem you're solving for a specific group of people. And on a more practical note as well, funders will ask you this question. So, for example, grant applications almost always want to know who else is doing this work and why your organization is different. So it's better to have that answer on the front end than trying to fill out, a bunch of local grant applications and struggling to find that answer. Okay, oops. So, this might be the most important slide in the deck, so your mission statement, because this is not just a tagline, this is not marketing language, this is the legal and operational foundation of your entire organization. So the IRS will evaluate your 501c3 application based on whether your stated purpose qualifies as exempt under the tax code. And if your mission is too vague or too broad, this can really slow down or even derail the process. So this is a very simple formula that I'd like you to try if you haven't already used this before. Maybe you've already completed this step, that's great. But this is something I like to share with folks to really just make it very simple and to the point. So you'll see on the slide, it's your organization's name, in exists to, and then the action for who, so thinking of a specific population, in where. So what's your service area? Is it just Champaign County? Is it a specific demographic of people? Is it the entire state of Illinois? Really getting focused on that as well. And then that last piece is so that, and your outcome of what you're trying to do from serving that population. So this is really simple, and that's on purpose because it forces clarity. And if you can't fill in every blank, you might have some more thinking to do, and that's totally okay. And that's exactly what we're here for tonight to start thinking about. So I'm curious, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but does anyone have a mission statement or want to try this formula, so to speak? If not, that's okay too, but I just wanted to allow some space if anyone was feeling brave and wanted to share. Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
When you were speaking on the other organization and that may serve the population you're trying to serve, isn't it sometimes still good to move forward with that population because most organizations only get funded to serve so many people. And if you have an organization servicing that same population, then more people can get service.
That's a great question. So Mark asked if you have the same population, but you know that current population is underserved, is there still value in having a very similar mission and focus? This is one of those nuanced issues where I personally would recommend exploring collaboration with the folks that are already doing that work, and if they're doing it well. I think there's real power and strength in being a program of, and especially because, if you're not already incorporated as a nonprofit organization, you do have some more support and stability in a well-established nonprofit that's doing that work, and then adding your unique skills potentially to that organization under that same umbrella. So it's definitely something to explore, but I would recommend, doing some more research and seeing about talking to those organizational leaders about what does this actually look like, where are those gaps, because you might also be in that gap on that Venn diagram where you're serving a unique audience and you just didn't know because you haven't been having those conversations yet. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Okay, so let's talk about something that can really trip up lots of passionate, well-intentioned founders. The assumption that because you're building this, you get to run all of it. So here's the reality. As a founder, you need to decide what your role is going to be, and some combinations are simply not allowed. So for example, you'll see on this slide, you cannot be the executive director and the board chair at the same time. You also can't simultaneously be a volunteer and a paid staff member, and that is because those duties have to be separated. And then these are not, technicalities to frustrate you or to delay the work you're trying to do. I know that this always feels urgent and you want to get the ball rolling, but they do exist to protect you, not only you, but your organization and the community that you're trying to serve from conflicts of interest. So this part can feel a little bit counterintuitive because you built this, so why shouldn't you control it? But the structure of a nonprofit is designed around accountability, and accountability does require separation. So the board governs, the staff executes, and those roles do have to be distinct. So we talked a little bit about the mission statement. If that is essentially the soul of your nonprofit, then I want you to think about your board of directors as the spine. So in Illinois, you need at least 3, but I do want to be honest with you, this 3 is the required minimum. It is not the end goal. So you do need, ideally, your founding board is 5 to 7 members, people who are unrelated to you, and I do mean that literally. So no family members, because these individuals are legally responsible for your organization's governance, finance, and compliance. So I know that in a lot of situations that family members, friends, they're the people rallying around you, helping you do this work and start that up, and that does not mean that they can't help contribute in other meaningful ways, but you do want to think very critically about who are those board members, especially when you're just getting started, because this is not just a ceremonial role. They will be signing off on decisions, they have to show up to meetings, and they'll even fundraise on your behalf. So who should you be looking for this initial board? So people who believe in your mission and who have skills that you don't. So maybe a lawyer, an accountant, or even someone with fundraising experience. So someone who knows your community deeply, because you're not just filling seats, you really do want to build a team that can hold your organization accountable, even when things get hard. And when you're starting a nonprofit and these are all new things, and building relationships and connections, you really want to make sure that piece is strong. So as this slide says, at a minimum, you'll need those 3 elected positions on the board, and that is a president or a chair, a secretary, and a treasurer. But do you want to think carefully about who you're asking and why? Because like I said, those first people who say yes to being on your board are making a real commitment, and they really do deserve to know what they're signing up for. So transparency is also very key here. All right, so let's talk about the fun part, writing a business plan. No cheers, okay. Nobody loves this part, but it is good that we're talking about it. So I've seen founders who have skipped this piece, and situations where someone gets 6 months in, maybe they've incorporated to a 501c3, they've got a board, they have a mission, and then they realize they have no idea how they're going to pay for it. And this is something I've seen in my 1.5 years at Community Foundation, talking to hundreds of amazing community members about this, and this is really why I wanted to make sure to have a point to talk about this. Because a business plan does not have to be a 40-page document, okay? For a startup nonprofit, it really comes down to 3 honest questions that you'll see on this slide. So who are you serving and where? What is it actually going to cost to serve them in a year? And how is that money going to come in? So are you thinking about grant options? Are you thinking about a donor pipeline, and who are those individual donors? And then also fundraising strategies. So there are no wrong answers here, but there are incomplete ones. And those incomplete ones are what can get people into trouble. One other note I'd like to make about this is that it's really important to proactively think, when you're thinking fundraising strategies, about grants. I hear this all the time, that nonprofits want to go and apply for grants, which is wonderful, but I do see this as something that a lot of people might not know. Some funders do require 2 years in business to be eligible for their grant funds. And for some, this is not just a recommendation that they have, this will be a requirement. So I always like to be very realistic and level set with folks that while there are going to be some grants available, it might not be this, abundant landscape that you might think it is right when you're starting. And that's why it's really important to think about your finances, especially those first 2 years. And then one other point before we go on to the next part is that you really want to think about when your fiscal year starts and ends and what accounting method that you're going to use, because these two decisions will affect your tax filings, your grant eligibility, like I just mentioned, and your reporting requirements. So you really do want to make these intentionally and on the front end if you can. All right. See, bad part over. Super easy.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course, yes.
If you're just in the developmental stage of organizing, how do you find a fiscal sponsor before you become a tax-exempt organization?
Great example. So I would like to say that you can reach out to a local philanthropic hub, such as a community foundation. So that is something that we like to help with. I would say to look at larger organizations that maybe are advertising this on their websites. You're normally going to see very long-standing, well-established nonprofits who have the capacity to offer this. Typically, they're granting out money to nonprofit organizations. So the top of mind ones that I think of are either community foundations or United Way. But certainly if you reach out to someone in that sphere, they'll get you connected to someone who can maybe talk to you about what that looks like with their organization.
And what normally is under the area of fiscal sponsorship in terms of what things happen?
Well, I do have some resources I can send you, but just to answer your question, generally there are, certain requirements that someone who does not have that status but is under that umbrella with the 501c3, there's reporting requirements and just some general transparency requirements, but it can differ from organization to organization. So I would just say that there are certain reporting requirements and different things that you have to use to operate under the nonprofit and ensure that you're being fiscally responsible with any money granted to you as a fiscal sponsorship. But the hope is, for example, at Community Foundation, when we've done this with folks, is that this is a temporary umbrella for you that you're really working to then get your own 501c3 status. So I like to also see it as you kind of graduate from that within a couple years, or depending on how quickly you're able to do all of the steps that we're covering tonight.
And approximately how much time, I'm sorry, I'm asking too many questions here, from the point of saying, yes, I want to do this, to the time that you can be a 501c3. Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Especially with the way our government is screwed up right now.
Yes, so he asked that how long can we expect it to take to, if you have a fiscal sponsorship, to eventually be your own 501c3? And unfortunately, my answer is that just depends on, to your point, how quickly, we don't have a direct line to the IRS to approve documents. So it kind of depends on some bureaucratic wheels to an extent. But again, having strong partners that know what they're doing and, the strong partner that is providing you the fiscal sponsorship should really be able to help you and guide you on those steps as well.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, so I have a quick and easy one for us. So let's take a breath here, because this slide is really simple and practical, and it can also save a lot of heartache. So before you fall in love with your organization's name, before you buy a domain, and before you design a logo or print anything like a business card, because those are so exciting, I know, you really do want to go to ilsos.gov, the Secretary of State's website, and search whether that name is already taken. So this takes seriously 5 minutes, and it does not cost anything. And if that name is available, you can reserve it by calling the number here on the screen. So it's just that 2 easy, simple steps. And that way you can go and print all the business cards, get that website, do all those great things, and continue to build your brand identity around that name. Okay, so that was all step 1. So before we dive into next steps, I do want to give you a moment to take stock of where you are. So this is just a quick checkpoint list. I don't want you to grade yourselves, but I just want you to notice. Some of you may have checked every single box, maybe before you even walked in here today. Some of you may have checked 1 or 2, and some of you might be realizing maybe this is the first time that you realize that there maybe is a lot of runway ahead of you, but all of that is okay. Every single person that's going to be on our panel tonight sat somewhere on this list, probably closer to the beginning than you may even expect, and they figured it out, and that's why they came back here tonight to share and help you do the same. So wherever you are in the right room. Okay, so the road ahead. Now that we've talked through all those preparation steps before you filed a piece of paperwork, we spent the bulk of our time tonight on step 1, and that really was intentional because that preparation work, which sometimes people do skip, it's the work that determines whether everything that follows actually holds. So I know that some of you in this room are already past step 1, and that's great. Maybe you've already started filing. Maybe you're mid-process and you've hit a wall. Or maybe you just wanted to see, what the full picture looks like before you jump in. So for the next few minutes, I do want to walk through steps 2 through 5, which we're going to follow along in that handout I mentioned. So we're not going to go as deep as we did with preparation, but that is because the goal is that every single person in this room leaves tonight with a very clear and confident picture of the full road ahead. So I don't want there to be any surprises. So let's dive in. So let's talk about step 2, making it official. So this is when your organization officially comes to life on paper. So like we said in step 1, you've done the thinking, you've done the planning, and now it's time to make it real. So there are 6 things on this checklist, and I do want to flag a few of them specifically. So your registered agent must be physically located in Illinois and available during regular business hours. So this means this cannot be necessarily like a PO box. This should not be someone who maybe travels frequently out of the state or out of the country, or even works remotely out of the state. And that is because this person will receive legal notices on your behalf. So you really do want to be thoughtful about who you're selecting as your registered agent. Yeah.
Registered agent, what exactly is that person?
Yes, so this should be a person that's affiliated with your organization that is not like consistently traveling out of state, working out of state, going on.
Anybody?
I mean, hopefully connected to your organization. You don't necessarily want, like the mailman to get he's going to deliver it, not get it. But yes, it can be someone that you trust.
Like a lawyer or anything like that?
No, this is just where that mail is going to go. That are those legal notices that you really want to pay attention to. So just someone that's trusted, that is checking their mail and is in Illinois.
But it could be you, right?
Yeah, it could be us, Community Foundation, but you do have to come pick it up, please. Okay, sorry, question, yes.
Yeah, so you said it can't be a PO box, but what if it's like an I-postal one, like where it says like technically it's a physical address?
I'm not quite sure, but I do know that on the IRS website, there will be more information. Although, Jeanette, do you know the answer?
Yes box.
Wonderful. Expert in the room. Jeanette said yes, she does.
That's okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. And then, sorry, was there another question?
Can we get copies of the slides?
Of course, yes. And that is also why we're recording the session. So I will send all of this information out to all of the guests in the room today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So I want to talk about your articles of incorporation. So those get filed at cyberdriveillinois.com, and this is $50. It's a relatively straightforward process, but you do want to take your time, as with all of these different pieces of paper, and be accurate, because again, those errors can slow things down. Next, I want to talk about your bylaws. So these will not be filed with the state, and they are required when you apply for federal tax exempt status. So this is another area you do want to be forward thinking, because bylaws are your organization's governing rule book, and your board will rely on them every time a significant decision needs to be made. And then lastly, your first board meeting. So this is also very key. It's required by law. So you must elect your officers like we discussed in that preparation phase, approve your mission statement, and adopt your conflict of interest policy. So you must document all of it through official meeting minutes, and this is the beginning of your governance record. So you really want to start strong here, because then maintenance of all of these things will be easier. Okay, so once that step is complete, now we're moving on to step 3. So you're ready. You're gonna apply for that 501c3 status. So this is the moment that the entire process has been building towards, and your 501c3 is that determination that makes your organization federally tax exempt, and what makes donations to your organization tax deductible for your donors. So, and that's why this matters so much. So you're going to either file a Form 1023 or a Form 1023-EZ. The easy version is streamlined, and it's faster to complete, faster to process. It does cost $275 versus just the regular standard 1023 form, which is $600. But not every organization will qualify for the EZ form. So before you just try to do the EZ one, I would make sure there's an eligibility worksheet on the IRS website that you can use, and look at that to determine whether you can file the EZ versus the standard. So the most important thing I want you to remember from this slide is that you have 15 months from the date that you filed your articles of incorporation to submit this application. So you really do want to make sure that you're planning accordingly, and you don't want to miss that deadline. And if you're unsure which form to file, or if your organizational structure is more complex, I recommend talking to an attorney or an accountant before you submit. So, and this is one of those moments where you will have to pay these professionals, but it really does pay off and save you a lot. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, that's okay.
What happens if you miss the deadline?
You will essentially have to start the process again. Yeah. And so they try to give you enough time to, everyone is working full time and having full lives, and this is something that you're doing. And so they do give you that 15 months, but I would pay good attention to that deadline, because it can creep up quickly. Okay.
Excuse me. I have a question.
Yes.
So what is the main difference between 501c3 and 501c4?
Actually, I have a resource handout I can give to you that explains the differences. I do want to be conscientious of our time, so we have our panelists come up here and chat with you, but I have a resource I can give to you that breaks down the different like C3, C4, C6. And if anyone else is interested, there are different incorporations, but 501c3 is the most common one you're going to see. Thank you. Okay. So steps 4 and 5, we're going to cross the finish line. 2 very important things that we want to think about. So because these can also be potential pitfalls. This is where a lot of funders start to run out of steam, because at this point you've done a lot of the work. You have an EIN, you've submitted your 1023 form, and it really does feel like you're basically done. But on the state side, you do need to file a CO1 registration statement with the Illinois Attorney General. This is required under Illinois law the moment your organization begins soliciting charitable contributions. So you need to make sure this step is complete before you're accepting donor dollars. And this form, good news, is only $15. And this is typically an obstacle I see for many, but it's just simply because not knowing that it exists. You will also need to apply separately for your state sales tax exemption through the Illinois Department of Revenue using Form Stax 1, and that is a separate process from your federal exemption, and it does have its own application. So that is another piece of paperwork that you're going to need to fill out. Yes?
So with that being said, this area that you're speaking on now,
Mhm.
is that within that 15-month window, or is that after or before?
Ideally, you're kind of working on this probably within that same 15 months, but the last slide, it was specific on that deadline. So yes, you do have more wiggle room with that, but you're probably working on all of these things in sequence as you go.
Simultaneously, probably.
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
yes. But again, there's more in-depth guidelines as well on the IRS website that will help you and really tighten up maybe some of those deadlines and help you make a plan for filling out all that paperwork.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then one more thing I want to talk about before we put it all together is the insurance. So I want to spend a moment here because this one really matters for the people sitting on your board. So directors and officers liability insurance, commonly called D&O and D&O coverage, this protects your board members personally from claims made against them while they're serving your organization. So this is before you open your doors, before you hold a public event, and before you accept that first donation, you really do want to get this D&O insurance in place. All right. I know this was a lot, but there's some good news. Like I said, now we're going to wrap this up and hear from our panel. So the good news is that you don't have to do this alone. You've already done so much for the future success of your nonprofit just by being here tonight, so let's quickly recap. So step one is that foundation that we discussed, the preparation work that most people skip, that we spent most of our time on together tonight. So, and then steps 2 through 5 are that path that follows. So some of you will walk it quickly, some, you're gonna take your time, but either way, you wanna hit all of those steps, and some of those will require outside help, so please don't be afraid to ask for help, because that is not a setback. This is simply the process. I don't know how many times I've said in the past year and a half that this process is indeed a marathon and not a sprint, so please take your time. And what I want to leave you here with tonight is that you don't have to figure any of this out alone. Like I said, the Community Foundation and the Center for Nonprofit Excellence is here and exists precisely for times like this, to walk alongside you and provide you the support. All right, so I have 2 small things before I'm going to bring our panelists up here. I know we just talked about a kind of a fast overview of what all that paperwork looks like after you've done all the research and planning. So some of you may be familiar with Tricia Teague from Vermilion County, who owns the TREP School. She's worked a lot in the entrepreneurial space, is running for mayor of Danville, a wonderful and super smart woman, and she actually approached me saying that so many people are requesting help in the nonprofit space that she's expanding her work into working with nonprofits as well. So she's got a course that will walk you through all of those steps 2 through 5 I just talked about for only $99. This is available, it starts June 15th. There's a QR code here on the screen. Please feel free to take a photo, and there's a flyer in the back for you that has a QR code as well. So I'd highly recommend, if you're feeling like, you've completed that step 1 of preparation, you're ready to jump in, but you would like some support, this would be a great avenue for you to explore that. And Tricia is a trusted partner with the Community Foundation. Okay, and lastly, if you enjoyed this session and you do want to dive deeper into the mechanics of building a strong and sustainable nonprofit, I want you to be on the lookout for future training topics. So this session is kicking off our Incubating Impact educational series that's equipping driven and business-minded individuals with evidence-backed resources and support for navigating the nonprofit landscape in East Central Illinois. So we do have another session that will be coming up in August, so please stay tuned for more information. You can follow us on our website, on social media, or sign up for our newsletter, but we will be diving into all of these topics here on the screen and really get some local experts in here as well that could be good thought partners for you. All right, yes, question before we start the panel.
So since we're from Danville, we could talk to Tricia and we would get the information that you're giving, she would put that in place.
Yes, so while this is informational to help, give you the tools to do this nonprofit work with you and your constituents, Tricia is actually offering a program to walk you through all those steps and actually help you complete them with her.
Because I already go to her and say,
Yeah. No, she's wonderful. So yeah, I'd recommend, if you have a connection, explore that. If you don't, she's wonderful, and I'm sure would be happy to talk with anyone about this. Yeah. Yes.
That session in August that you mentioned, is that also here?
Yes, so all these incubating impact sessions will be here at the library, either this room or occasionally in Robeson C, but they will be here at the Champaign Public Library, and all of them will be recorded as well, so we can share them out to folks who are unable to make it. Okay, yes.
Besides this session, if we need to move forward, should we contact you after the meeting?
Yeah, you sure can, yes. Yeah, my cards are in the back there, and this is part of my role as the director for the Center for Nonprofit Excellence. I get to talk to amazing people like you and learn more about the amazing things you're trying to do in your community. So I'd be happy to chat and set up a meeting. Awesome. Okay, well, for the sake of time, because I do want to bring up our two amazing panelists, let me go ahead. So at this point, I want to open it up to our panelists. I'm going to start with a question for everyone once they make their way up here. But so if you want to make your way up here, Vanessa Fowry, who is the executive director of Prairie Dragon Paddlers, and Jeanette Jerzyk, the co-founder and president of the Family Room. So let's go ahead and give them a round of applause. So, both of our panelists tonight are alumni of our Community Solutions Incubator program, and they've continued to thrive and grow their nonprofit business right here in East Central Illinois. So I'm going to start with an opening, and can you just briefly introduce yourself, your organization, and just what inspired you to take the first step towards making your idea a reality?
Hi, good evening. I'm so glad you guys are here. So I'm Jeanette Jerzyk, and one of the founders of the Family Room. We've been a 501c3 since 2019, and the Family Room, the mission of the Family Room is to bring comfort and joy to children and families in the foster care system in Champaign County. And do you want the origin story, or do you want to save that?
It's up to you. If you'd like to share it now, you can.
Well, I'll do my just hello and let Vanessa introduce herself, and then I'll tell you how it all started, because it's a little bit of a story.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Vanessa Fury. I'm Executive Director of the Prairie Dragon Paddlers, which is the first breast cancer survivor dragon boat team in Illinois. Dragon boating is an ancient Chinese sport where a lot of women, in this case, get in a 22-person boat, and we compete with other breast cancer survivor teams regionally, nationally, and now internationally. But we also are supporting those who have a breast cancer diagnosis in the East Central Illinois area. So we do a lot of other outreach, education, we support research, and we work to empower women to get their groove back after they've had a diagnosis like breast cancer.
Great.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So in 2018, I am a very active member of the Junior League of Champaign-Urbana, which is a women's community service organization that taught me a lot about the community, the needs of the community, and also how to sit on a board and how to run a nonprofit organization. In the summer of 2018, a very good friend of mine, who was a registered foster parent, brought home two young girls into her home. And I have two young girls of my own, and she had no clothing or supplies for these young girls. And she asked me if I had anything that I would be willing to share with her. And I said, of course. I went down to my basement. I packed a care package of clothes and shoes that my girls had grown out of, and I brought them to her home. And about 2 weeks later, another friend of mine posted on Facebook that she had just brought two girls home in the foster care system, and put it out there on social media if anyone had any supplies they were willing to donate. So I put a care package together and I left it on her front doorstep. A few weeks later, a friend of mine at work said he knew someone who was taking home a foster child and was looking for donations. And I literally stopped in my tracks and said, wait 1 second. Where is the resource in this community? I know a lot of communities. I'm not a Champaign native. I've lived on the East Coast and the West Coast and landed in the middle. And I know a lot of communities have a foster care closet, a place where families can come and shop and get supplies. And I said, okay, there's got to be a resource somewhere in our community. And so we did the research, because I did not want to create something that already existed. I'm so glad, I think Caitlyn brought that up at the very, very beginning, because with all that I've learned about nonprofits in our community, there are over 850 nonprofits in Champaign County alone, all fighting for the same resources. And so I'm of the same mindset that if you are passionate about something and you are thinking about creating a nonprofit, go find the people who are doing the work that you want to do and help them do it better, would be my best advice. But we did our research and we learned that there was no one doing this work. There are some wonderful churches and small organizations that had community closets for their own members. Because Champaign-Urbana is a transient community with the university in town, we learned that there had been some small groups that had done backpack programs that had brought supplies to the agencies like DCFS, but they had come and gone and fizzled out. And so there's a fateful night where my friends and I, including those two mothers who had the children in their homes, in my living room, and we talked about what we could create. And we came up with the idea for the family room. And so the family room is a nonprofit organization that we wanted to create a strong, sturdy foundation that would last long beyond just us and our time, so that the agencies who serve foster families, DCFS, CYFS, LSSI, and there's a few smaller ones, could have the supplies and the support that they need to do their jobs better. We learned so much about the struggles of the agencies, the gaps in services, the amount of money that comes out of caseworkers' pockets to support children who are in transition, whether it's meals or a place to sleep. And we said we want to do something about that. So we do have a backpack program where we stuff and supply backpacks to the 3 agencies so that a caseworker can easily grab an age-appropriate backpack that's pre-stuffed with school supplies or diapers or bottles or a blanket and a stuffy, and they can grab clothing in the right size, put it in their bags and go. And so that they can focus on what's important, and that's taking care of the children, and we can take care of everything else. And in the last 5 years, we have become the inventory management organization for those 3 agencies. So we now manage all of their supplies and all of their storage rooms. We now go into their space, we organize their storage rooms, we stock their storage rooms, because we learned along the way, DCFS is a state-funded, state-ran organization. They're not allowed to run donation drives. They're not allowed to do fundraisers. They're not even allowed to have a wish list on their website of what they actually need. And so through the years, people would drop off donations at their office thinking they're being helpful with the greatest of intention, and the staff at DCFS, they don't have the bandwidth to organize inventory, to manage donations. So when we showed up thinking, okay, we had done some fundraisers, we had done some donation drives, we came to their offices with supplies ready to move in and get to work. And we found their storage room was a complete disaster. There were boxes filled with loose socks. There were piles of pajamas with dust on them. So before we could give to their storage units, the very first thing we did, our board, our volunteer board, we've been 100% volunteers since day one, we cleared out their closet, we took everything home, we washed it, we put it in Ziploc bags, we labeled it, and we rebuilt their storage system so that they could operate better. And so that is the beginning of how the family room came to be. And we met with and interviewed staff members at each of the agencies to learn what we didn't know, to learn what they truly needed, and we went from there.
That's great, and I feel like it's, a testament to both of you are serving noble causes and found that, unique area of where you fit, where you saw a need and did the preparation work. And I mean, that is something that is so important. So I do want to ask, in the spirit of that preparedness and knowing that was a big point of today's session. So thinking about, we talked about the paperwork, the legal side of becoming a 501c3, it can feel very overwhelming. So were there certain resources, people, or tools that made the biggest difference for you getting through that? Anything that you'd share with these folks that they should tap into?
I can share that with you because because I came in as an executive director. I was on the board of directors of Prairie Dragon Paddlers. It had already been founded by another woman. And unfortunately, though, when she started it as a charitable trust. And that was what she thought she was supposed to do. But that actually lined up that she, as the trustee, was liable for anything that had happened in that organization. So when I came into the board, my job was to transfer us and reapply through the 1023 form as a nonprofit organization. And so that whole process was, we found an attorney that had a tie to breast cancer. We found other community members who have done this before. A nice thing about when you're starting a nonprofit and you're looking for different guidelines and so forth is look for other people who have gone through it too. We had, for example, bylaws from other dragon boat organizations in other states. Now, that wouldn't be a direct one-to-one correlation with everything for Illinois law, but it gave us a really good idea of what we needed to have in our bylaws and how we had to function. So anytime you can basically copy and steal what other people have already done, you're better off at and get you that much more ahead of things. So we also having a strong mission, having that business plan, and I would say also, and Caitlyn knows this, I'm a stickler for strategic plans too. Have an idea of where you want to grow in the next couple of years, and then start going out and filling in those gaps with people who have those skill sets that you don't have or that you don't have in your organization yet. And that's how you will go through some of these processes. The IRS and the Attorney General and the Secretary of State, I mean, it's like nails on the chalkboard to me. But going through it very methodically with the documents that you already are starting to build about defining your organization and what it does and how it is in relation to other areas. And again, who else in your community does that similarly? Look at their bylaws, look at their articles of incorporation. There are probably things you can borrow from those that will help you build out your own. So it was a lot of that. And I will say it's also been, the Community Foundation is an incredible resource for this community. And we have gone through their incubator program probably a couple of times now because our board kept churning over and we would get new people who've never served on a board before. And so we wanted them to be trained as well. And so the Community Foundation offers great resources for that. And I would say the biggest thing that has helped sort of spread out the work is when you are recruiting volunteers and filling in the gaps of things you don't have. One thing that our board did not have when I first joined it was a committee structure. So you start small and you bring people in by serving on a committee. They don't even have to be on the board at that point. And they can serve on a committee and start helping you, start learning more about your organization and get more vested in it. And then you have basically a pipeline of potential future board members as well, because you're always wanting to turn that over after so many years as well. So building up the resources of people is just as important as building up the resources of funding and other expertise. So.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that leads us into a wonderful segue, because I do want to make sure to ask about, we've talked about founding that board and how instrumental that these people are in your organization and the organization's success. So now that you've, been in the organization, it's clearly been successful. Is there something you'd like to share about that process of building your founding board that maybe you didn't know then, but you know now that you'd like to, share with this group of people?
Yeah, so that fateful night in my living room, there were about, 12 or 13 of us in the room brainstorming. Maybe 8 of them actually became founding board members. So we had to be realistic and honest about what we thought we could accomplish and what efforts it was going to take and who could play each role. And so some of our excited friends fell into those roles, and some of them were honest and said, I don't have the bandwidth right now, and I will support you in other ways. And so you have to be open and flexible with who, you may have an idea of who you want on your board, but it might look different than you originally planned. But then you start going, okay, what skills do we need? And we found an accountant to be our treasurer, who's an amazing woman and friend. And then for us in particular, because of the nature of our mission, we had spent 2 years interviewing these staff members at these agencies, and then we said, well, what if we invited them to join the board? And now we have a senior staff member at each of the 3 large agencies sit on our board as board members. We get the information we need directly from the source, and they get access to the materials they need directly from the source. So we close the gap between information and services by inviting. So we are not a direct service agency. We don't necessarily work directly with the families and children. Occasionally, we do some foster family appreciation events, and we have opportunities to interact with the families. But mostly, we support the agencies so they can do their work. And so by having that middleman, that middle layer, and inviting them to sit on our board, we were able to be a lot more strategic and streamlined. But I want to answer that first question about making mistakes.
Go ahead, yeah, go for it.
So I did all the paperwork at the beginning, and I did not do it perfectly. We did have one early board member who had started a nonprofit. She sort of walked me through. But when I filed the paperwork, I missed a box. And it was a costly box. So by accident, I filed as a private foundation instead of a public charity. So that box that says PF or PC, please pay attention to that. It took me 2 years and $500 to fix my mistake. Mm-hmm. We are now a public charity, but that was just something, it was literally a box on the form that I missed. Mm-hmm. And I wrote them letters, and I called, and I tried to get them to, like, look, it was just a mistake, please, just switch it, Mm-hmm. And oh no, it took 2 years, lots of paperwork, and a large fee to fix my mistake. So don't make that mistake if you can help it, but the things you learn and go forward with are valuable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Jeanette, you are not the only person that I've heard this story. So I am going to echo that, yes, look at all of those things, ask the questions, reach out to your resources, including the community foundation. These forms can be very complex, and oftentimes this is the first time you're creating a nonprofit organization. So very much echo the sentiment there. So I know we're close to time. I'd like to ask one final question to the panelists and then open it up for questions from the audience. So, what is something that people commonly underestimate about running a nonprofit that goes beyond getting incorporated?
Well, I would say that they think they can do it all, and usually it sort of all the work falls to maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people, and that's just going to burn you out very quickly. And I think what people don't do early enough, but would be very beneficial, is think about who your constituents are. A 360 view of who your constituents are. It's not just other people that do the same thing, that are in the same field that you're in, but it's also who specifically you serve, who else is benefiting from that service you would be providing. For example, Prairie Dragon Paddlers, we're a dragon boat team, but we're a group of breast cancer survivors. We have title sponsors and other sponsors who are healthcare providers, hospitals are some of them. But we also have individuals who have businesses whose lives have been touched by breast cancer and they want to do something. And if some of those people have expertise that we need, we invite them to be a part of our organization, because I would love somebody who has the legal expertise. One of our problems was the accounting department. We would recruit someone who was going to be our treasurer, but that person or those people in succession were not always the most reliable. We weren't getting things filed on time, we were paying penalties, or we were begging the inculpate to not pay penalties, is more like it.
The IRS does not listen.
And so we decided, that was a shortfall for us, so we ended up actually hiring an accounting firm that works with a lot of nonprofits, and they do our paperwork. So we have someone who serves as a treasurer, but they actually just help provide that paper flow to an accounting firm that actually does all of that for us, and for, I think, about $300 a month. It is well worth it. So finding your gaps and being honest about your gaps, and looking for those people who have a shared vested interest in what you care about, because that's the strength you're bringing to the equation, right? You're the one that really cares deeply about fixing a problem or serving a community. Share that enthusiasm in these concise statements, in the mission statement, and find those other people who share that passion for you and leverage their strengths. And you come together and you build that out broadly, not just top down, but across that, so you have more people doing maybe little bits that help you, and you're the one that brings it all together. So take the time to not only get through all the paperwork, because we all can't wait till we get past that, but do the strategic planning, do the business planning, so it helps you talk about your organization well. It helps you share what direction you're going. It helps other people know what you're about so easily. It's just a helpful tool to get you from point A to point B. And then when you get to point B, it's time to work on the next plan, and you get to point C. And you look back and you've grown a lot. So that's jamming all that into my answer.
Thank you. Well, that's great. Jeanette, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I would say seek out educational opportunities like this. The Family Room was a member of the incubator at the Community Foundation for 3.5 years, and we're still learning. So you're never done. But also, while this looks so big and overwhelming, you don't have to do it all at once. You can start small and tier up over time. We filed the 1023 Easy because one of the, if you read the eligibility requirements, there's a dollar amount of what you expect to bring in annually, and we were well under that number. And that process was much easier and much faster. I'm going to be honest. I filed another. It became my business. Under my business umbrella, I started a nonprofit arm, and it took me less than 2 months to get 501c3 status. So not every story is a big, scary story. Mm-hmm. Now, the Family Room, we are still a volunteer board. So we have ideas and strategies about how we want to grow to the point where we can have paid staff. But I think there's a lot of people miss that difference between, there are many nonprofits that have a board and a staff, and they're two different things, but you can be just a board. And we are all volunteer, and no one gets paid to do the work, and the work gets done. Mm-hmm. And we are still functioning very well as a small nonprofit. So it does depend on the size you expect to be, the amount of money you expect to be. You can start small and grow into a larger nonprofit. My favorite word that I've learned in this whole process is leverage. You have to leverage the talents of your board. You have to leverage your relationships in the community. One of the things that we do that has benefited us greatly is we found other people and other groups who will do the work for us. So we have partnerships with churches and student groups that will come and volunteer in our office space or our inventory space. We have a partnership with a sorority. Their entire mission as a sorority is to support children in foster care. They don't do direct service, they do fundraising. We get to be the beneficiary of their fundraising. Mm-hmm. There is an annual marathon here in Champaign, the Illinois Marathon. You can start a fundraising team and recruit friends to run and raise money on your behalf. So you don't have to have one fiscal partner, you don't have to have one donor, you don't have to have, you can do fundraising at any stage. But there's ways to leverage what's already out there and get people to do some of the work for you. We have church groups and partners do donation drives on our behalf. We don't do 100% of the work anymore because we've leveraged. but my favorite use of the word leverage is this. I am one person, I have 24 hours in a day, and my husband and I had a very serious conversation about whether or not we were cut out to be foster parents. And based on our professional lives and our family life, we made a decision that that was not possible at this time. Now, I could be a foster parent and I could impact the life of one child and it would be incredible and amazing. But I looked at my skill set and I looked at my time and I looked at my passion, and I'm leveraging my skills and I'm leveraging my time so that my nonprofit organization can impact the lives of hundreds of children in different ways. And so I may not be a foster parent today, but I am impacting foster children all across Champaign County. And we are currently having conversations about expanding into Vermilion County because the need is so great.
Thank you both so much. So inspiring hearing your stories and different ways of, impacting the community you want to serve, taking the time that it takes and really resourcing yourself first and being very thoughtful about the process. And it's a testament to your success in your organization. So thank you. I know that we're a bit over time and I could honestly have us here all day and night and talk about all the wonderful things. But I do want to make sure I allow at least some time, and thank you everyone for staying a little bit over. Are there any questions from the audience for the panelists before we end our session tonight?
Okay. Our organization has been in service for over 60 years, but has gone through many, many changes. It's been nonprofit several times, and we went from sort of like a neighborhood organization, and they took us back to a nonprofit, but they didn't do the groundwork. They didn't study what they needed to have. The premise was coming in for nonprofits, get a 501c3, and you can get grants, but they didn't study on how to get to that point, which created a problem within the group, and the group kind of fizzled out. So we're left with a partial board. Our board members were our seniors. The one president failed, hurt herself, so she had to drop out. Our next vice president failed, hurt himself, burned his house up, so he had to drop out. I tried picking up the treasurer. We had a secretary, but she didn't come to any meetings, so I'm still doing secretary work. And I'm trying to figure out how to make this situation work. We had a clubhouse that this winter had just threw us out of the park with everything. So I'm trying to, I would like to get out of it myself.
Because we're in great debt and no income right now.
So we're trying to figure out how do we reverse ourselves, how do we go forward. We lost our mission statement and everything, so I was like let's just close it out, and then we will get enough people who are more interested in it to bring it back together. A lot of the people, well, the few people who've been in it for ever and ever don't want to close it out, but I don't see us going forward at this point. We are in so much Dutch.
Yeah.
Is your 501c3 status still active right now?
It is still active.
So and the filings and so forth, because you may, if you're not filing and doing something, you may also be incurring penalties eventually for IRS 990s not being filed, etc.
We're doing the filing.
Okay.
We don't understand what we're doing, but we are doing.
You need a consultant to help you
Take my card, Jackie.
And get you sorted.
I think you need to almost feel like you're just starting back at square one.
That's right.
Yeah.
And set it all up properly. But you have to also kind of stop whatever bleeding is happening.
Right.
So you don't get into trouble. We had a few times, because we didn't have a secretary, treasurer who was filing on time, and I was getting these notices when I became president of the board at that time, that we were getting these penalties, and I'm like, whoa, this don't even know about this. So I was writing letters back and forth to the IRS to say, here's how we're going to fix it. If you just, let us understand this was the situation, but this is how we are going to fix it. And that was actually satisfactory to them, that they stopped the penalties we agreed on an amount, but that it stopped the bleeding while we could start and get the right status and get the right people in place. So stop the bleeding wherever that's at. And I would also say, is the past experiences that your constituents have had, has that left a negative view of your organization to them?
Yes, it has.
Okay, so you might want to even scrap the whole thing and start with a brand new entity from the ground up to do the same thing, but maybe even calling it something different and bringing in new people and just starting from scratch through help with the Community Foundation, step by step, and do it right. Take your time to do it right and grow appropriately so you can get back to doing what you originally wanted to do, which was help your community. But it sounds like you're not even at ground level, you're below ground.
Yeah, definitely.
So
It takes the time it takes.
I just wanted to echo, it is okay to know that it's time to sunset or dissolve an organization. I just completed sitting on the last board of the Junior League of Champaign-Urbana, because this year we voted to dissolve the organization after 94 years. Because we were no longer able to serve the mission as intended in this community. Yes, there was financial and paperwork and things we have to clean up, and we decided this was the right board to do that work instead of letting it fizzle even worse.
Great.
There's a question, yeah.
My question was, because you said you work with students, I don't know, students from university, high school, or where, then you say you work also with foster kids. How you get those foster kids?
How do I get?
The foster kids.
the foster children.
Oh,
Children against them.
well, our volunteers are made up of, right, we have registered student organizations that we can partner with that can come and help us in different ways. There are many high schools locally that have volunteer requirements for their students. And so if you can provide projects that students or middle school students can do, they can do some of this work for you. The children who are in foster care those are the families that we serve. So a family who is a licensed foster family and they take in a child into their home and a caseworker from an agency is handling that whole transition. Those are the people that we serve. We want to make sure they have all of their needs met. And so they don't necessarily give us money or time. They are receiving the money and time. Does that make sense?
I know they do all stuff, work with them, DFS, you can say like that.
DCFS is our partner, and we serve them so they can serve the foster families. Yeah.
I'll just say thank you. I retired in 2016 from DCFS. You started in 2008.
We did.
But do you, we're making beds. Do you also provide linen for, sheets
Yes,
and
we
stuff for
will.
beds?
Yeah, we are trying to, so we've had several focus groups and so that we can assess what are those things that are falling through the cracks when the family gets funding. Because the family does get stipends and funding. There are certain things it covers and certain things it doesn't. So we have an emergency fund for certain things just to make sure that families don't go without. Do you know Heidi Goldbranson Andrews?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she's on our board.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a wonderful testament to the power of relationships and connections too. Right here in this community, we all know each other, someone knows someone, and the power of that collaboration, whether that's, to help out each other as a program of and an established nonprofit or two separate nonprofits, there's always space and room for people who care. So are there any last questions? I know we're over time and I think the microphone's telling me something, but I'm trying to speak louder. But yeah, any last questions before we conclude?
I have one final thing I'd like to share.
Okay, sure.
And when this event got announced, so I'm on Caitlyn's mailing list, I very intentionally responded and asked to be on the panel tonight for one very specific reason, 2 years ago, I sat right here on a panel for So You Want to Start a Nonprofit, and that conversation devolved into a lot of negative. It was a lot of what we did wrong, or why you shouldn't start a nonprofit, or I walked away from that panel thinking, I should have told everyone in the room this. If you want to start a nonprofit because you want to make the world a better place or you want to make your community better, find a way and do it. Because there's a fire within you that's telling you something. And so 2 years ago, I left that panel feeling like I had let the room down because the whole conversation got very negative. And the whole reason we do what we do is because it's important. And we want you guys to do what's important to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes, good luck.
both. Thank you both. This